There is one creature remembered in the legends of almost every human culture that's ever existed. A creature depicted with remarkable similarity by the Chinese, the Aztecs, even the Inuit, who live in a frozen land where no reptiles are found. Even they have stories of this animal, the dragon. Cultures from different continents, people who had no contact with one another, yet all of them have stories describing the same mythical animal. Could it be these stories were more than myth? What if we discovered that this creature that haunts our imagination had once been real? If dragons were real, then what were they really like? How did they fly and how did they breathe fire? Why did they die out? To unlock these secrets, we'd need to find physical evidence, evidence revealed by the slow retreat of a melting glacier. What if we found a body? The Carpathian Mountains of northeastern Romania, a remote place. The last stronghold of Europe's great predators, wolves, bears, and lynx. And according to legend, here is where another great predator made its last stand. A legend that has found new life. Alpine skiers who ventured into these mountains stumbled upon a network of ice caves opened by an unseasonably warm winter. What they found inside required official investigation. A brutal, medieval crime scene. The remains of human bodies dressed in 15th century armor. Men entombed in a mountain cave. And in the last chamber lay the creature that had sealed their fate over 500 years ago. A dragon carcass, completely intact, perfectly preserved for centuries in glacial ice, carefully excavated for scientific study. If the legends were in fact true, then it was fated that some form of physical proof would eventually be found. With this discovery, scientists can finally uncover the true nature of dragons. And with this find, other clues suggesting the origins of dragons might now be illuminated. The fossil remains of a Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of dinosaurs, the crown of its skull scarred by what look like talon marks. An impact injury sustained from above. Here are the telltale signs of an ancient species of dragon that lived millions of years before the creature found in the glacier. The Cretaceous period. An age long past. When giants walked the earth. When the greatest predator ever known left its footprint on history. A period ruled by Tyrannosaurus rex. Or so we thought. Normally a stranger to this remote place. The T-Rex has been forced from his usual hunting ground. Something has been raiding his territory and food has grown scarce. He has stumbled on the lair of the most astonishing carnivore that ever lived. The prehistoric dragon. And now this dragon is in real danger. Dwarfed by the gigantic T-Rex, it attempts a bluff, extending its wings to give the appearance that it is much larger than it really is. But the ravenous Rex is an experienced hunter. He isn't fooled. So the dragon tries another strategy. A piercing shriek that briefly stuns the dinosaur. The cry carries for miles. Still, the Rex refuses to yield. And there's nowhere to hide. But the dragon still has one trick left to play. And here she comes. This is her territory, and she's defending her son. The Tyrannosaurus will not last the night. Fire is the dragon's weapon of last resort. But she delivered the final blow too late. With a broken wing, she can no longer hunt, and she can no longer feed herself or her offspring. The injury his mother sustained in the fight with the T-Rex has proved fatal. Infection and blood loss have finally taken their toll. After 2 days, her smell is already starting to attract scavengers. For the moment, they're just pterosaurs, but who knows what other creatures may pick up the scent. The young dragon lingers by his mother's body. At 6 years, his wing musculature is fully developed, but untested. Young dragons learn to fly when their mothers push them out on their own, but it's usually not as sudden as this. Our young dragon has lost his mother at a critical moment. He may never get off the ground. If he is to survive, he must discover the power of flight on his own. How did dragons get aloft? A look inside this dragon's body will reveal the most ingenious adaptation in the natural history of flight. A system that remained largely unchanged for millions of years, from the early prehistoric dragon to this species found in the ice, the mountain dragon of Western myth and legend. The initial analysis of this dragon shows other adaptations for flight besides the obvious wings. The chest points towards a clear function. It's powerful, heavily muscled, similar to what one would see on birds of prey like falcons and eagles. Preliminary internal scans of the body are more revealing. A massive heart, also indicative of powered flight. The chest muscles would need large quantities of oxygen-rich blood to maintain a steady wing beat. The bones are perfectly designed for flight too. The internal structure is very specialized. It's honeycombed, a skeletal design also found in birds, strong but very lightweight. All of these adaptations are general characteristics of powered flight. But this creature still looks too heavy to be supported by such relatively small wings. They couldn't possibly generate the kind of lift needed to get an animal this big off the ground. The wingspan measures under 20 feet, and with an initial estimated weight of 900 pounds, scientists would have to probe deeper to find the key to dragon flight. Continued scanning shows something more unusual inside the chest cavity, a pair of leathery organs resembling a second pair of lungs. The tissue walls of these organs are thin and elastic, designed to expand. They're storage sacks. What did they hold? The answer escapes with a hiss. Gas. Not gas from decomposition, the specimen is too well preserved. This gas was present while the animal was still alive. But what is it? Analysis proves the gas is composed predominantly of hydrogen. Hydrogen gas is 14 times less dense than air. Fill a balloon with hydrogen and it rises. Fill these organs with hydrogen and the principle is the same. These are the dragon's flight bladders. But how did dragons produce the hydrogen that got them off the ground? Getting off the ground. It's a problem confronting the young prehistoric dragon as well. Unable to hunt, he exploits the only food available to him. Even in death, his mother may still help him live. She may even still help him to fly. All creatures contain bacteria in their gut that help break down food, and in the process, the bacteria release metabolic byproducts, gas. But the bacteria inside dragons are unique. They release hydrogen, and unlike other animals, a dragon's gas doesn't go to waste. The hydrogen is channeled into the two storage sacs, the dragon's flight bladders. Along with the super-light skeleton, the gas-filled flight bladders are the keys to dragon flight. And now this young dragon's sophisticated flight system is about to be put to the test. While the pterosaurs wait their turn, a more dangerous creature has picked up the scent of his decomposing mother, an older male dragon. Its broken horns and dull appearance betray a dragon at the end of his days. Constant territorial battles mean that male dragons rarely reach old age. Few live past 40. Pushed from his territory by a younger and fitter male, this dragon is a nomad. He now wanders in search of food, scavenging other kills more often than making his own. But given the choice, he'd prefer fresh meat. And this time, the young dragon's mother isn't there to save him. The old nomad closes with surprising speed. The juvenile's only hope of survival is to get airborne. Cleverly, he heads for the trees. He knows the old male cannot fly here. Inside, his body is working overtime, his heart beating, his muscles pumping, hydrogen being generated at a prodigious rate. But it's still not enough. His flight bladders may be full, but so is his stomach. The undigested meat is weighing him down, and so instinct takes over. At the last moment, he empties his stomach and spreads his wings at last. The young dragon takes flight for the first time in his life. But if he's lived to fight another day, he will have to master another legendary evolutionary adaptation. He must learn to breathe fire. The body of a dragon, revealed in the melting ice of a glacier. What if such a discovery were made and the legends of this fantastic beast proved true? Scientists, autopsying its remains to learn how dragons could fly, would find a complex system of hydrogen gas and a super light skeletal system. But where is the physiological evidence to support the dragon's most spectacular adaptation? How did dragons breathe fire? What would this body tell us? The inner surface of the mouth is almost armor-plated. At the back of the throat, there is a fleshy valve. This flap is very similar to the false palate found in crocodile throats. Crocodiles use it to stop their lungs from flooding when grabbing prey underwater. It's a distinct adaptation, suggesting that somewhere in the dim and distant past, dragons and crocodilians might share an ancient common ancestor. But why would the dragon need a false palate? Crocodiles need a false palate to prevent water from flooding the lungs. Could dragons have used a false palate to prevent a backdraft of fire from scorching their lungs? Evidence of a fire-breathing creature? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it seems. The natural world is full of bizarre creatures that have the most extraordinary weapons. Tongues like spears, color and shape-shifting, lassos, even creatures that shoot liquid fire. This insect is well known to scientists. It's the bombardier beetle. When threatened, it fires out a burning liquid at a temperature of over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, almost boiling point. It does it by pumping a liquid fuel into a reaction chamber where a catalyst ignites the mixture. The burning chemicals have nowhere to go but out, and with a bang. Nature is not constrained by our lack of imagination, but it does observe rules. If dragons were to breathe fire, then they too would require a catalyst. With further examination of the carcass comes a strange find. The creature appears to have both incisors, meat-ripping teeth, and flattened molars, grinding teeth. Stingrays have similar teeth for grinding the rock-hard shells of mollusks that they feed on. But why would a meat-ripping predator like a dragon need specialized grinding teeth? Pulverized sediment is found on the surface enamel. Powdered rock with particularly large traces of platinum. Like the bombardier beetle, dragons needed a catalyst to trigger their chemical ignition. They used platinum. The reaction of platinum with hydrogen ignites the hydrogen. The hydrogen combusts. Dragons could breathe fire. Several years have passed, and the juvenile prehistoric dragon is now a young adult. He is homeless and without a territory. He will never mate. But his time has come. He has flown deep inside the territory of a dominant male. It is a daring act. Half of all young males are killed in territorial battles. The dull coat of adolescence has transformed into a vibrant display, designed to intimidate rival males and attract females. He prepares for the fight of his life. Before continuing, he stops to consume a rare and valuable mineral found in all dragon territories. Not a mineral to spark his energy. This is a mineral that will spark his fire. This is a platinum deposit. In the heart of his 100 square miles of territory, the resident dragon sends a blazing message into the air. It signals to challengers and females alike that he is fit, healthy, and confident enough to waste the precious resource of fire on a display. The message is not lost on our young male. If he has any chance at all of winning this duel, he must be at his very best. The stakes are high. With territory comes a guaranteed supply of food, and the one thing every young male needs if he is to leave his mark on the next generation. Females. And this female is the real reason he is here. She's in season, and for just 1 month will breed with the resident male. And here he is. His territory and his female are under threat, and he intends to deal with it. The resident is an experienced survivor, a dragon in his prime, and he's put down every challenger that's come before. He wears the dark coloration dominant males adopt when in command of a territory. He no longer displays the red markings of a bachelor. He now displays with fire. And his combat experience is immediately apparent. With his first shot, he inflicts serious damage on our dragon. The young dragon climbs for the clouds, desperate for cover and the cooling vapor. But the aggressive tactics of the resident aren't without risk. The very same hydrogen that keeps him airborne fuels his flame. The dragon's flight and fire apparatus is a binary system. Both rely on the stored hydrogen in the flight bladders. If the resident burns too much of his hydrogen reserves, he'll be forced from the sky. Our young dragon's luck can't hold forever. He flees for the border of the dominant male's territory. But the resident has misjudged his opponent. The young dragon isn't looking to escape. He's looking to strike. And he has a full payload of hydrogen left to burn. By using his weapons with consummate skill, he has triumphed. The female prepares to accept the new dragon overlord. The young dragon seems to revel in his victory. All his life he's fought the odds, and now at last he's come into his own. But his triumph will be short-lived. 65 million years ago, at the peak of the prehistoric dragon's success, a curtain comes crashing down on the Cretaceous period. A meteorite the size of Mount Everest careens into the planet, wiping out nearly all life on Earth. On land, nothing larger than a cat will survive, but in the sea, life will find a way. If dragons were more than just a myth, and the fact that nearly every human culture has a story about them more than just a universally strange coincidence, then a scientific explanation for them would be possible. Scientists could discover how dragons were able to fly and breathe fire. But if dragons had been alive since the time of the dinosaurs, then how did they survive long enough to be remembered by humankind? 65 million years ago, a meteorite 6 miles wide laid waste to nearly all life on Earth. The cataclysm is known as the KT event. It unleashed one of the greatest mass extinctions in the history of our planet. The age of dinosaurs was brought to a crashing halt. How did dragons escape this doom? The only other large creatures to survive the KT event all have one thing in common. They were aquatic. Sharks, skates, rays, coelacanths, turtles, and crocodiles. The dragon body found in the ice cave already suggests a common ancestry with an aquatic animal. The false palate found at the back of the dragon's throat is morphologically similar to the false palate of crocodiles. But crocodilians aren't close relatives. They branched off long before the first true dragon had evolved. But neither is this mountain dragon a very close relative of the prehistoric dragon that did battle with T-Rex. That ancient species was completely wiped out by the KT meteorite. This dragon developed along a different branch of the family tree. The descendants of the first primitive dragon followed very different evolutionary paths. At the time of the KT catastrophe, the prehistoric dragon was not alone. It had a cousin, a marine dragon. Water provided dragons with an escape route from one of the deadliest episodes in the Earth's history. Like other large creatures that endured the KT event, dragons swam from extinction. Over time, flight bladders had become swim bladders. Reduced wings developed into fins, and the powerful tail became a rudder. Marine dragons thrived. Then, as global temperatures rose, some marine dragons returned to the coastal margins. Moving into estuaries and traveling up rivers, it wasn't long before they made their first tentative steps back on land. Many creatures alive today made similar transitions back and forth between land and sea. If the legends are accurate, then dragons too would have re-emerged on land millions of years after the KT event. But what of their marine predecessors? How long did that line last? The sea serpent. Were these mythical creatures real too? Are sea monster legends actually accounts of marine dragons? And what of the dragons that returned to the land? Where would they have first appeared? What about dragons in Chinese mythology? These majestic creatures that symbolize strength and cunning are low-slung to the ground, short-limbed, long and slender. The kind of body one would expect from an animal that's just emerged from the water. A form that would remain well-suited for life in a dense forest. The marine dragons tempted out of the water and back onto land find that life on Earth has re-established itself. Around the globe, new habitats and new species have evolved. The era of the dinosaurs is over, and a new group of animals has risen up to fill the void: mammals. And mammals provide plentiful food for dragons. Like their ancestors, this forest dragon that inhabited Central and Southeast Asia remains a solitary and unsociable creature. She seeks others of her own kind only when looking for a mate. The wings on this dragon are vestigial. Flight isn't much use when hunting in these forests, but she can move with absolute stealth. The markings on her skin break up her outline in the dappled forest light. But her hunt is disturbed. There's an intruder in her territory. A creature that's grown bold and will come between this dragon and her prey for the last time. A creature that occupies as powerful a place in the lore and mythology of China as the dragon. The tiger. The forest dragon moves with grim purpose. A ravine will not turn back her wrath. The intruder in her territory is a real and emerging threat to her very survival. Smaller and far more mobile in the forest undergrowth, the new mammalian predators are proving accomplished hunters. The tiger senses the presence of another animal. Is it a threat, or is it prey? The dragon remains silent. She has encountered tigers before. She knows this is a wary animal, but an inquisitive animal. A slight move will be enough. The tiger's prey response is triggered. Hunger wins out over caution. He charges. Curiosity kills the cat. One less rival, one more meal. The kill is taken to a clearing. The forest dragon has retained the ancient ability of her kind. They still carry the same hydrogen-producing gut bacteria as their forebears. What were swim bladders now once again serve as fuel stores. But now the flight bladders are used almost exclusively for fire. The tiger's fur can't be easily digested, so the dragon simply scorches it away. Fire is no longer simply a weapon, but a tool. The flame draws another mammal near, and this species is even more curious and poses an even greater threat to her survival. Throughout the age of mammals, dragons remained apex predators. They still controlled a weapon no other creature could withstand: fire. But their dominance was no longer assured. The mammals had produced their challenger, man. And we coveted that which made dragons strong. We recognized the possibilities of fire. We too were cunning. Soon people learned to use fire to clear forests and to mold metal into savage weapons. With fire, we forged our strength. Over tens of thousands of years, the evolutionary blink of an eye, we forced all other creatures into submission, save one. But we had stolen the dragon's fire, and soon we would wield it against them. A burning conflict was kindled between our species, a conflict that would become the stuff of myth and legend. If dragons were more than just a myth, and the fact that nearly every human culture has a story about them more than just a strange coincidence, then the discovery of a well-preserved body, frozen for centuries in glacial ice, could tell scientists how dragons lived. But the story of how dragons finally died is already written. The engravings, drawings, and sculptures that survive from our own history. These were not works of primitive imagination. These were records, first-hand accounts made by people who lived alongside dragons and fought them. The scene discovered in the cave high in the Carpathian Mountains, the body of a dragon and the burned and blackened remains of 15th century warriors, this encounter is remembered in the folk history of the region. Dragon iconography, Romania, the stained glass windows of a medieval church. A winged creature that dwelled in remote mountain areas, raiding livestock and breathing fire. The story of the final conflict with the creature the locals called the Devil from the Mountain. Scientists autopsying the dragon body now begin to look for clues to how this conflict played out. A post-mortem analysis of the more than 500-year-old human remains is a quick study. The cause of death is seared into their parched, leathery skin. Carbon residue. These men were burned alive. But the dragon is a less straightforward investigation. While scientists have proved that this animal could breathe fire and that it was endowed with a sophisticated fire apparatus, what puzzles them is that it doesn't look like this particular dragon ever turned on its ignition. The mouth shows no sign of carbonized residue. No sign of any exposure to intense heat. For an animal that's supposed to breathe fire, this comes as a surprise. Earlier scans detected non-organic matter embedded in the right atrium of the heart. The cause of death for this dragon, now no longer a mystery. They remove an iron fragment. The fractured tip of a sword. But subsequent scanning gives them a shock. The reproductive system. Scientists are able to determine that the dragon is a female, yet there is no evidence of follicular activity. The reproductive tract is immature. This is only a young dragon. It was still a baby when it was killed. And if it didn't breathe fire, as the autopsy suggests, then that means something else killed the men found in the ice cave. Another dragon's fire torched those men. Scientists have discovered evidence that none of the legends has recorded. Dragons had parental care. Dragons guarded their young. It is the 15th century, and a mountain dragon is under siege. The distant ancestors of this female mountain dragon first emerged from the waters to the east, following the great mammoth caravans crossing over the plains below. But the mammoths have long since disappeared. Dragons are disappearing too. Human pressures have forced them into the highest and most remote parts of their range. The territory this female patrols is still just beyond the reach of humans. But food in this remote world is scarce. Today she's on a hunt for the rarest creature on Earth. But she's not looking for prey. She's looking for a mate. She leaves her scent throughout her territory. Strong winds carry the pheromones south. Normally, female dragons are reproductively mature by their 7th year. This female is nearly 23 years old, and in all her life she has never seen a male dragon. She may yet live another 20 years, longer if she's lucky. She's still at her peak, but if she's to contribute to the ebbing dragon population, she must find a mate soon. Young dragons remain with their mothers for as long as 6 years. Such an extended period of parental care historically ensured a high survival rate of their offspring. But now, with their numbers so low, dragons aren't reproducing fast enough to keep their population stable. The species is slipping away. The female returns to her den. It is a cave melted from dense glacial ice. Despite the freezing cold outside, in here the temperature is relatively warm. Like an igloo, the thick walls retain heat. But mountain dragons have other lines of defense against the cold: a heat-exchanging circulatory system and a highly stratified layer of tissue under their scales help minimize heat loss. And from her marine ancestors, she's inherited a blood protein similar to that of polar fish. Specialized proteins found in this Antarctic ice fish prevent the formation of ice crystals in the bloodstream, so the blood continues to flow and the fish can remain active even in freezing water. This genetic inheritance has proved vital to mountain dragons as they retreat into ever more remote areas in their attempts to avoid humankind. Soon it will be fall, and the female will begin shutting down and going into torpor, slowing her metabolism during the coldest months of the year, another adaptation for life in this extreme environment. But something outside draws her attention. A sound both strange yet uncannily familiar brings her to the opening of the cave. Against the odds, a male mountain dragon has picked up her scent. He's a nomad who has wandered from the Atlas Mountains of North Africa, where mountain dragons have now all but vanished. Crossing into southern Europe, he's made his way to the Carpathians in search of a territory and a mate. The dwindling dragon population has driven this male on a 10-year quest to find a female, and now at last he has found her. The female's instinct takes over, and she does what her kind has done for thousands of years. In an age-old aerial display, she leads her suitor on. But her beguiling acrobatics serve another purpose, for this solitary and suspicious female is about to set the male the ultimate test. It is a courtship ritual that is as perilous as it is spectacular. At the height of her climb, she will lock talons with him and drop out of the sky in a dazzling free fall, just like bald eagle pairs still do today. And with their bond, a small flicker of hope for the continuation of the species. If dragons were real, if the legends were true, then the stained glass windows of a medieval church in Romania depict what happened high in the Carpathian Mountains over 500 years ago. The body of a dragon, unearthed with the remains of human warriors who had come to kill it. But that's not all that's been found. With the results of their autopsy, scientists have identified evidence that another dragon once lived in the ice cave where the dragon body was first located. They return to the discovery site, and there they make a discovery of their own. A nest. Further evidence of dragon parental care. Whatever killed the men found in the ice cave very likely lived in the ice cave itself with its offspring. The female examines her nest. Rocks, wood, leaves, and ash all tightly packed into a cone. Crocodiles bury their eggs in active compost to keep warm. Mountain dragons have a much more direct method. The eggshells have heat-resistant properties that can withstand intensely high temperatures. The developing dragon embryos inside are protected. But more dangerous to them than heat exposure is a drop in temperature. In fact, without this searing external heat, the dragon chicks inside would die. The rocks of the nest further shield the eggs from a direct blast, but crucially, they retain the heat, releasing it over a long period and keeping the internal temperature of the nest stable. If she is to become a mother after these many years of waiting, then careful and constant temperature control is essential over the 30-day incubation period. Her mate returns from hunting. He has been unsuccessful. Again. After mating, female dragons become more aggressive, programmed by instinct to be deeply suspicious of any creature approaching the nest, even a mate. In order to appease her and make up for the lack of food, he brings a gift. Another rock for the nest. Although short-tempered from hunger and lack of sleep, the gesture placates the female. She accepts the rock. The male can now enter the cave, and she will take her turn to hunt. And the male takes responsibility for the critical temperature control. Heat-sensitive cells in his tongue allow him to check the temperature. If it falls much below 60 degrees for any period of time, the embryos will die. Strangely, he starts to turn down the heat. The incubation temperature of the eggs determines the sex of the dragon offspring, exactly like crocodile broods. Cooler temperatures encourage the development of females. Males, even a son, will compete for territory, food, and breeding females. So the adult male decides to nip a potential rival in the bud. His instinct for self-preservation is hardwired into him. But it's a cruel twist of evolutionary fate that he's now creating an imbalance between the sexes that will push his species even further towards the brink of extinction. A day has passed before the female returns from yet another unsuccessful hunt. She is immediately agitated. The male is not at his post. She heads straight for the nest. Something is very wrong. The male has let the incubation temperature drop dangerously low. It is already too late for one of her chicks, but the other might survive. The male realizes his presence will no longer be tolerated. It's time for him to move on. Males are usually seen off the nest site much sooner, but our female is inexperienced. Now she must try to keep her remaining egg alive at all costs. But finding prey in this hostile environment takes time. She'll have to find an easier supply of food so she can stay close by her egg. She will have to raid the farms of men. Dragons. If the legends were true, if they had lived alongside us, then they would have been caught in the surging tide of human expansion. Environments altered to suit our needs. Habitats sacrificed to fit our purposes. Those creatures that can't keep pace must find their way on the fringes of our world. The female has indeed been driven to desperate measures, because she now has more than one mouth to feed. This is her daughter, perhaps the last dragon ever born. Preying on livestock from the local farms, just as the myth chronicled, she has no way of knowing that in the act of providing for her young, she has made herself an enemy in the eyes of man. Simple farmers had tried to put a stop to the raids by themselves at first. But soon the duty to deal with the dragon fell to the local lord and his squire. Unaware of the price on her head, the female dragon continues to behave as her kind has for 1,000 generations. She mines the rock of this alpine cave for her precious platinum and passes on the secret of fire. Her daughter is learning. Soon she'll develop an instinctive appetite for platinum, but she's too young now and turns her nose up at it. After feeding upon another stolen sheep, mother and daughter bask in the sun's warmth. Their wings soak up heat like solar panels, yet another adaptation for life in this forbidding climate. They lie down together for a nap, sharing one another's body warmth. But soon the mother will have to hunt again, and her daughter will be left unguarded. The female searches for food. With summer once more drawing to a close, she and her baby need energy stores before they fall into torpor and shut down for the coldest winter months. Wild game is getting harder to come by as more people push into her territorial hunting grounds. A predator that once took down mammoths now gets by on plundered sheep. And now men have come to put a final stop to her scavenging. The Lord and his squire arrive, ready to face whatever lurks within. A creature that they believe is born of hell's fire. An evil that must be destroyed. They do not see a frightened animal, unable to defend itself. Like elephants, dragon mothers appear to mourn their dead. But the grieving will have to wait. In a final insult, the assassins wear the blood of her daughter as a trophy. They are about to feel the full vented fury of a vengeful dragon mother. The Lord will escape. His squire won't be so fortunate. With the loss of her daughter, the female mountain dragon has been brought into season again. Even after such a calamity, instinct compels her to look for a mate once more. So she tries to draw the male back into her territory. She hoards the armor from her daughter's assassin to embellish her display. Dragons are naturally attracted to reflective objects, likely because they're conditioned to look for shiny platinum deposits. But her calls and her scent marking will go unanswered. No amount of armor will help her summon the male back now. Chances are, he's no longer alive. Where would he have gone to escape human pressures? There's nowhere left to hide. As winter draws in and food is at its scarcest, the dragon begins shutting down. Like crocodiles in periods of drought, she is quite capable of getting through lean times. She'll survive the winter on her meager reserves of fat. Her body temperature drops dramatically, and she goes into suspended animation. But this survival strategy leaves her exposed. All her usual functions are placed on emergency status, and her hydrogen reserves fall to almost zero. The female is awakened from her torpor. Many humans have troubled her since her daughter's death, and now humans have come to trouble her once more. This time they are better prepared. Mercenaries paid for by the local lord. Dragon slayers. Without food, she can't make hydrogen. And without her precious gas, she cannot fly or breathe fire. She's trapped. A final clash between man and beast, in which none shall triumph. Over the years, the cave was sealed by snow and ice, the bloody battle frozen in time. The dragon faded from reality to mythology. Perhaps it would have stayed that way if the glacier hadn't given up its secrets at last. Echo scans reveal another chamber adjacent to the main cave, hidden behind a wall of ice. Scientists deploy a camera-mounted ROV to investigate. Inside, their suspicions are confirmed. They find more human remains, and they find the body of the adult dragon that lived in this cave and died here with her daughter. The last of a legendary line. A legend made flesh and blood. A creature that has fired our imagination for thousands of years. A creature that burns bright in the memory of all humankind. But if dragons were at last delivered from the realm of myth, then what would we find? What stories would they have to tell us? It is human nature to exaggerate what we fear, and so it is likely that we would have overlooked much about what dragons once were. They were soaring creatures that spouted fire. They sacrificed themselves so that they might save their young. They were, above all, creatures that did what they must in order to survive. How easy it would have been for us to forget that part of the story. How easy it would have been to forget that they must have been so much more than mere monsters.
The story of dragons, in most of our minds, begins with myth and legend, the stories that we heard as children. How come everybody had pictures, images, stories of dragons?
Every culture has a dragon myth. The Eskimos, the Aztecs, the Chinese.
Yet these were countries that never connected, that never talked to each other. It simply is too hard to believe that they were all coincidentally making it up.
Dragons are a universal cultural phenomenon.
How did that come about? Where did that come from?
How do all these cultures arrive at the same idea of the same basic animal?
How come dragons are so much on everybody's mind around the world?
A beast you thought could never have existed actually existed.
Making a fantasy real behind the scenes of Animal Planet's Dragons. 3 years in the making, Dragons is the newest special from Animal Planet. Animal Planet worked with production crews from around the world and collaborated with top scientists, artists, and animators to create this genre-busting special. Thanks to their groundbreaking work, you will believe the dragons were real and might still be. Explore the history of the dragon, delve into the real science of the sinister serpent, and go behind the scenes to see how the biggest special in Animal Planet history was created. Discover how a fantasy was made real. Discover Animal Planet's Dragons.
Charlie Foley had the idea that dragons actually existed. I thought one day it'd be great if I could work on a documentary about dragons. Well, Charlie's idea, imagining that dragons are real animals, it was much bigger than I'd ever imagined. And then he pulled me into the project here, and it's something I've been wanting to work on for years.
Dragons are always a part of a story. They're never the story themselves. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make the dragons the centerpiece. This is their story. This isn't a story in which they figure. This is all about dragons.
Together, in my office, we kind of came up with a story. Charlie said, what if we found a dragon body? I said, yeah, what if it was in a cave up in the ice, just like it just revealed? And what if there were bodies in there, and part of the story is trying to figure out what happened in that cave? So Charlie and I just kind of built on each other's ideas, and it was really exciting.
We didn't want to just make this sort of a reconstruction of existing myths. We wanted to make our own stories, and really we had to, because if we're going to treat dragons like real animals, that hasn't been done before, and that's what the exciting challenge was that was in front of us.
But before the story of dragons could begin, there were many questions that needed to be answered.
We wanted to know how they could fly, how they could reproduce.
What would they have looked like? How would they have breathed fire?
Are they warm-blooded? Are they cold-blooded?
What their physiologies, their biologies, their behaviors have been like?
How big would its wings have been? What proportions would its body have had to have for it to be able to fly?
How did they avoid exploding themselves when they breathed out fire?
We set out to make dragons as convincing as possible. We worked with our academic sources, we worked with natural history experts to be as credible as you could be about what dragons were really like.
Kevin and I started thinking, if dragons really were real, how would they have lived? Where would they have lived? And we presented that to Dr. Hogarth, and he helped refine some of the things that we had. And through a process of slow evolution of thought, we started making dragons that were more and more realistic.
We knew what species of dragons we wanted to do, but we wanted him to put the flesh on the bones of these dragons and to make sure that when we came with a theory of how it could breathe fire, how it could fly, that it made sense.
It's amazing how much was known about dragons, how they grew, what they fed on, how they behaved, all the little characteristics, all the different kinds of dragons, and it's all documented in medieval manuscripts, in Chinese encyclopedias, going right back to the dawn of history. The earliest dragons, about 3,000 or 4,000 years old.
We see dragons throughout history, from the Cretaceous period alongside Tyrannosaurus rex, all the way into the Middle Ages.
People believed in dragons as real animals, just like any other animal. And actually, if you think about it, how could you say in Western Europe in the Middle Ages that an elephant was a real animal and a dragon wasn't? The information you had about them was both the same in each case. What we're trying to do is to produce an animal that might have evolved and just happened not to. It had to be a plausible size and shape, plausible physiology, reasonable colours. One of the interesting technical questions, of course, was how to get them airborne. And partly that's a matter of wings and so on, but in order to make them light, we had them generating hydrogen. There are bacteria which can produce hydrogen, and a lot of animals have bacteria in their guts. So we put two and two together and said that these dragons had gut bacteria which produced hydrogen, and we had a special hydrogen storage chamber. So by using biological mechanisms, we managed to put together a mechanism for facilitating flight in dragons by making them lighter, using hydrogen for buoyancy, and also using the hydrogen and oxygen and the latest thing in catalytic technology to produce the fire breathing.
The autopsy dragon has grinding teeth, and the grinding teeth are essential in the fire physiology because the dragon chews on this mineral, platinum, and it's a catalyst for fire.
So it's quite a neat solution, I think, to a number of really quite tricky technical problems, which I may say evolution hasn't managed to solve in 500 million years, so it's quite satisfying to have achieved something that the natural world hasn't.
Solving an evolutionary mystery meant dragons were scientifically plausible, but to be believable, the dragons would have to be physically plausible as well. So Animal Planet turned to John Sibbick.
He's the guy who started to really imagine the dragons, not just from a behavioral standpoint, not from an inner working standpoint, but just what would they look like?
A world-renowned illustrator, Sibbick has been creating dinosaurs for books, researchers, and museums for a quarter of a century. And the challenge of creating a realistic dragon was too much to resist.
The difference between drawing dinosaurs and dragons is that you had a lot of artistic license. You could create in your mind how you wanted it to look. This is the classic Chinese dragon. It's got sort of sensitive feelers in the front, it's got forked tongue, it's got the sort of bearded fringe, and it's got spikes, and it's got this great thrashing tail. This one I see as the classic dragon. It's got massive wings, it's got the long head, and it's got the spiky bits, and it's got fire. This one, on the other hand, has two sets of limbs. There are no front legs. They're incorporated into the leading edge of the wings. So this one makes more anatomical sense. It's rather like a large theropod dinosaur, like a T-Rex.
To take dragons from science and sketches to the screen, Animal Planet turned to the leading animation company in the world. Framestore's Emmy-winning work on Walking with Dinosaurs and their collaboration on the latest Harry Potter movie made them the ideal partner to bring the dragons to life. For dragons to look real, they have to feel real, and that's where the folks at Framestore start.
Hi, my name's Darren Hawley. I'm texture painting supervisor on Dragons, and it's my job to design and paint the skins of all the creatures in the show. We wanted to go for a quite dramatic look, but still keep within the realms of believability. So these guys have got a kind of like a black and white orca type of colour. The references we use for this kind of thing are real-world animals. Anything with a nice textural quality to the skin is good visual reference. So we'll paint the creature from lots of different views. So we'll do a side view, top view, bottom view, front view, back view, and then we project these all onto the surface of the model. And once they're projected, we take the skin off and we unwrap it and take it back into 2D space. So basically here you have the skin unwrapped, and you'll have the head here, the spine running down here, the tail. These are the back legs. So this is the finished product with all of the maps in place, lit and rendered. So once all these elements are combined, hopefully you will believe that you are seeing real dragons.
Textures make the dragons feel real. But to become real, they have to move like real animals. And that's where the animators come in.
My name's Neil Glasby. I'm lead animator on the Dragons project. When we actually animate the shot, we start with a much simplified version of the creature than you actually see on the screen. The reason we do that is because it's a much quicker thing to work with. It would be prohibitively slow to work with what we call the final rendered model. We can show you the difference between the two here. And what we have here is you can see there's no textures on them. The models are much more simple. And again, this speeds up the entire process. But obviously that's not going to be good enough to show on a TV screen. They don't look like believable creatures. So that's why we then go to this stage, where all of the textures, the final detail, the lighting, and the whole creatures are comped into the scene. So it takes it from what would be, say, 50% done to the final stage. Rather than just the motion being correct, now the overall looks, the visuals of it are in there as well now, where you become a totally believable creature.
Now that the dragons have been established scientifically, artistically rendered, fully textured, and animated, they have to be placed in real environments, doing real things like mating.
My favorite scene in the film is the dragons when they're courting. The two mountain dragons towards the end of the film, we see them clasp talons and drop from the sky. They're literally taking the plunge together. They're going to mate, and this is a courtship ritual that they're doing. And we see this great free fall where they go down from 1,000 feet high and they just plummet towards the earth.
A test of love, a show that they will bind together right until the very end, and only at the last moment do they pull away in a great barrage of fire.
It's emotional. I don't know why. It's just the beauty of the backdrop and just the idea. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could have seen that for real?
The courtship follows the courtship behaviour of sea eagles. And so we gave the guys footage of sea eagles courting, and they do that whole clasping of talons in the air, and it's absolutely beautiful, and they fly as high as they can, they spiral down. The dragon courtship is very much following that, and the animators followed the rhythm of the clasping and all that kind of stuff. They took very much from nature, so they reference nature all the time when they're trying to animate these things.
How was this incredible scene created? Just ask the Dragons special effects team.
Hi, I'm Surya Quintavalli, visual effects supervisor on Dragons. For this shot, we required the two dragons to go down a sort of mating ritualistic dance and fall down a huge distance. What we did was filmed a number of different backplates, just panning up the mountain, so we saw the whole range. We then joined all these together in one long strip, so we had control of the movement. Put the creatures into the background, added mist and camera shake to make the whole shot much more vibrant, and there's the final thing. Sometimes the role of supervisor involves getting wet, so in this case, I put on a wetsuit in order to swim like the Chinese dragon or the aquatic dragon. So I'll cause my interaction in the splashes. The animators then time the animation to match up with that, give us a textured, rendered creature. And then we'll take that, blend in so we get the lighting to look correct, and to get all the splashes working properly. And then you got the final shot.
Creating mountains and controlling free-falling dragons are cool, but the most important element of any dragon story is hot, real hot.
I think whenever anyone thinks about dragons, it's always the fire bit that captures the imagination. So in order to do this, we shot a number of different flamethrowers, different fire elements out on location. Quite often this is the best way of doing things. It's the reflections you get on the ice cave and the way the ice melts and the water drips down is something you can't get otherwise. But we also supplemented that with a studio shoot of fire elements, of a flamethrower behind a black screen, which we could then extract
and add to different shots. We shot this at slow motion and added a bit of magnesium dust just to give it a special magical sparkle to the whole shot. And then we're able to use these elements and mix them in with the backgrounds and the CG that we'd animated. I'll show you a few of the ways that we can get the animated creatures to look a bit more realistic and actually fit into the backgrounds. In this example, we're just having a bit of a dust kick. Then we can move that dust kick and just have it to be the dragon flapping its wings, kicking up a bit of sand on the volcanic crater. This is in the bamboo forest. We just want the Chinese dragon to be walking past through all the bamboo. But just to really sell the shot, we're going to knock the branch on the way through. So we'll film the branch being knocked. And then as the dragon walks past, just kicking it, just gives that believability to the whole thing and blends the two elements together. You've only got one chance to shoot things, so when you get back, there's no point in thinking, oh, I wish I'd done this or that. So you've got to make sure you're very thorough. For lighting information, we tend to use a white ball. This gives us the direction of the sun, the shadow areas, and also these poles give us a sense of distance and perspective. These are all fixed heights. And this number there is the distance where I'm standing from the camera, so in this case 6.4 meters. Sometimes holding a lighting ball in one place isn't quite good enough because the lighting changes a lot throughout the cave. So there we've got our lighting ball in position, but we can see there's very different light in different areas. So a walkthrough will show us how this changes. When the dragon then has to walk through the same place, we can see what's going on and how the light falls off. Some other effects are slightly more subtle. In this case, we've got a rock which has just been delivered as a gift by the male dragon. And we can see this steaming at the top of it that's coming off. So we want to try and replicate that with our animation. So we'll get the lighting right and then get a bit of rippling going. And as a final touch, just put the nostrils flaring slightly as well. And then you got the final shot.
From the origins of time, man has been fascinated with the dragon. Animal Planet's brand new special combines scientific fact, CGI animation, and cutting-edge special effects to bring dragons to life. But the question still remains, were dragons real creatures? After creating this special, the Animal Planet team isn't convinced the dragons are simply a fantasy.
Every day of the week, Animal Planet tells you about all the animals around this planet that we live on. But what about the one animal that we all know about, the one animal that we all grew up with, the one animal that's in popular culture around the world, but the one animal that we've never been able to tell you the story of because the technology never truly allowed us to bring it alive? That's why we started to think, let's try and bring to life the creature that has existed in all our minds and all our imaginations. Let's make it as real as we can.
Why shouldn't we believe in it now, if it biologically is possible?
So this is a real story that happens in nature, and what happens to these animals in their life cycles. Again, we've inspired from what happens in nature. And you're going to get drawn into here, and you're going to care about these animals because we're going to give them dimension, we give them personality.
It honours nature very much, and it feels right, and it feels organically that it belongs on Animal Planet.
This is the animal about which humankind has throughout our history been most compelled by. That's what's so fun about doing this, and that's why it's so appropriate for Animal Planet. This is the granddaddy, this is the big animal. This is an animal that we've breathed life into, and it breathes fire, and it flies, and it's real.
If I've done my job well, you will believe in dragons.
When you watch dragons, you will believe because the dragons look real, they feel real, and that's why I think you'll believe.
So who knows? Maybe they're still around.